Hey everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Oh my gosh, we're so excited for this event. My name is Cassie Riva. I'm the events coordinator at an Unlikely Story bookstore. Before I introduce Susie, I wanted to go over a few technical points. If you have any issues with video or audio quality, click on the help button in the upper right corner of your screen and follow the prompts. For any unresolvable issues, just leave the presentation and log back in and the problem should correct itself. Any questions for Susie can be written in the question and answer box below the screen. If you'd like to buy this amazing book, there's a button in the lower middle part of the screen that will take you directly to our website. With that said, I am thrilled to introduce debut author Susie Yang, whose novel White Ivy is receiving rave reviews from the Boston Globe, Entertainment Weekly, The Washington Post, BuzzFeed, Time Magazine, and so many more. White Ivy, which has been longlisted for the Center for Fiction's first novel prize, tells the story of a young girl trying to find her place in the world. Ivy was raised by her strict Chinese American family in Boston with little money and a grandmother who taught her how to steal from yard sales and secondhand shops. All her life, Ivy's been seen as an outsider, and because of this, as she grows up, she becomes obsessed with the lives of the privileged. Beautiful, dark, and different. White Ivy has everything: a relatable protagonist, a love triangle, a family with a lot of personality, and a thrilling, unexpected end. It covers the topic of race and immigration and has devious twists that will make readers want more. Despite all of the questionable choices that Ivy makes in this book to climb the social ladder, you still find yourself rooting for her in the end. Ivy is a master of deceit and a powerful anti-heroine that makes her own rules. Like the main character, Susie Yang was born in China and came to the US as a child. After receiving her doctorate of pharmacy from Rutgers, she launched a tech startup in San Francisco that teaches people how to code. She lived across the United States, Europe, and Asia, and now resides in London. Without further ado, Susie Yang, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Hi again, Cassie.
Hi. So how did this book come about?
Oh, wow. So it came about when I had decided I wanted to write a book. And the next question was, what kind of book? And so I kind of went back to reflect on what kind of books I loved and what kind of stories I loved. And I'm always really drawn to like morally gray characters who kind of go to great lengths to get what they want. So it's essentially, I love following along stories to see how far someone is willing to go in their plots and schemes. And when I had that concept, the character of Ivy just came to me with the first sentence of the book, which is Ivy Lin is a thief, but you would never know it to look at her. And then once I had that sentence, I wrote the first chapter within a day, and that became the bedrock for the rest of the novel.
That's awesome. It's so good. Who inspired the deceitful and sometimes unsympathetic character of Ivy Lin?
I think it just tends to be, like at the time I was reading a lot of like classics. I was reading like Edith Wharton, and I was just so inspired by that idea of the social climber, who, she kind of wants a more glamorous, society life. And then I had the idea of creating a character whose looks would be really incongruous with her personality. So Ivy, she, in the very first 2 paragraphs, she's sort of described as being very childlike and very plain, and everyone, doesn't, they just kind of overlook her. But inside, she kind of yearns to be seen, and she, is quite devious. And so I don't think it was based on a person. Like I definitely am not like that. Like I'm really drawn to people who really want things badly, because I don't think I'm the sort of person that has very strong desires. So I'm always like, oh, what makes somebody else, want something so badly? And it was that central question of why does Ivy want the things she wants so badly? That really became kind of the impetus to write the book.
That's fantastic. This book has so many different layers. It's just so much detail into this book. It's so good. In the book, Ivy was born in China and raised by her grandmother until she was 5, and then they came to live in Boston with her parents. How much of that is true to your life?
The details are quite similar. So I was born in China and I came to the US when I was 5. First lived in Colorado, and then we moved kind of all around the East Coast. So all around like Maryland. I was in Delaware for a few years, and then New Jersey, New York. So that part's quite similar, but I feel like that's actually really, that's actually a quite common theme among like Chinese Americans. I actually just wrote an essay about this for Oprah, but essentially it's kind of familiar to me. And I didn't find that detail that unique until my agent was like, oh, that's so interesting, you know, her background. So I left it in. But so I feel like that's pretty drawn from my life. And also the section where Ivy first returns back to China in the middle section of the book after she'd been gone for so long. That was definitely like the culture shock of returning to the country where she was born and feeling so out of place there. Yeah, that was definitely from my experience as well.
I've never read a book with an Asian American protagonist as the main character, which makes me which makes my reading like really narrow-sighted. And I realized that after reading your book, I was like, wow, I need to expand my horizons.
I mean, no, I mean, yeah, like growing up, me neither, you know, it was just Amy Tan, you know, and of course now over the past few years, there's been so many great Asian American authors, but yeah, growing up, there really wasn't that many.
Ivy's family members have very strong personalities. Do those personalities relate to any of your family members?
So when I think about it, I feel like Mei Feng, Ivy's grandmother, is sort of like a conglomeration of like all of my grandparents. I mean, none of them were thieves or taught me to steal, but we had really strong like women, like personalities, like my mom, my grandparents, both my grandmothers and my grandfather. And when I had the character of Mei Feng, like her voice just felt so distinct. You know, she's the type of grandma who will tell you to wear a lot of clothes and like tell you to eat dinner, like take you around. So it just came to me. Oh, and then the other detail about the yard sale was I did go to so many yard sales when I was a kid. And when I think back on it, I wonder how there were so many yard sales every week. You know, my grandma would just find them. So I would go with her. But then the wisdom and like the storytelling was really from my other grandmother. So she was just sort of a conglomeration of the kind of the various like paternal and maternal figures in my life growing up.
I grew up in Southie, so I'm very familiar with the Boston area. And actually, I remember a lot of yard sales growing up.
Yeah, there
now
were
that
so
I
many.
think about it,
Yeah.
I remember being dragged to a lot of these and my dad always buying me these really creepy porcelain dolls.
They're always like advertised on the trees, you know, with the signs. And my grandma had just had an eye for them. She would spot them everywhere. Yeah.
Ivy is smart, cunning, and as you say in the opening line of the book, Ivy Lin was a thief, but you would never know it to look at her. Other than ambition, she's very different from the waspy golden boy Gideon Spire, whom she idolizes in her childhood and then again as an adult. What does Ivy see in Gideon that makes her want him so bad?
I feel like when she was young, it was probably quite common. You know, it's probably like hormones. You know, she's the outcast. She really, you know, falls for somebody who's really cute and nice to her. You know, he's very kind to her. And I think, to me at least, it was really important to show that they had that bond, and she sort of had the unresolved, you know, one-sided crush on him for all these years. Because as when they meet again as an adult, all those feelings resurface, and she kind of puts him on this pedestal. And that was really important because I really feel like if Ivy and Gideon had met as adults and she didn't have that experience with him back in middle school, like I don't think she would have idolized him so much. You know, she would have gotten to know him, you know, and it would have been very normal. But because they had that history, I think it was really hard for her to kind of see him objectively the way he was as an adult. So yeah, to him, I think even as an adult, she just couldn't release, you know, those feelings of unresolved like crush and love for him.
Was there a Gideon Spire in your life growing up?
No, there wasn't. So it's so funny. Like Gideon is sort of the conglomeration of, I don't know, so many like friends, boyfriends, or people I've seen growing up. And to be honest, like he really was sort of formed for Ivy. Like I thought, what kind of character can she project all of her longings onto? I mean, little details here and there, like the beach house. I mean, you know, I had a friend who had a beach house. It really was just stories and people. I spent my freshman year with a senator's son who was a good friend of mine. So just sort of details that pulled together to form him. But his personality really was, I kind of created to be based around Ivy and why she would idealize him.
Awesome. The love triangle in this book is so awesome. It's going to take you for a ride. It's so fun. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process? Do you outline? Do you fly by the seat of your pants?
So I gave myself a year to finish the draft because I tend to be quite extreme. Like I'm not the sort of person who, can write 1 hour a day before work, like I really wish I was that diligent. But so for me, it was really all or nothing. So when I said, okay, I have to do it within the year or else I just kind of have to give up on being a writer, that really motivated me. So I think I probably spent 6 months rewriting the first 50 pages. Like I tend to just make sure I get the beginning correct. And then once I did that, I feel like the last almost 200-300 pages came really quickly because I knew what was going to happen. Yeah, and I'm such a night owl. So for me, it's not, I don't have a regular routine. I just sort of work through the night, and that's when I just tend to be the most productive.
You have a doctorate in pharmaceuticals and you worked at a tech company. What made you switch and decide that you wanted to become a writer?
I mean, I think the story is so I was just on this panel with other Asian American writers the other day, and I realized, oh my God, all of us have such similar backgrounds where we were such bookworms as a kid. We were always writing and always reading, but we thought of it as a hobby. I actually just get in trouble for reading books because I wasn't studying. My parents would be like, go study, stop like reading for fun. So to me, it was always a hobby. And I always thought, once I retire, maybe I can become a writer. But so after I got my degree, I realized, oh, I'm not cut out to be a pharmacist. Like I really hated going to my program. And then working in tech, when that opportunity came up, I thought this is a good alternative to being a pharmacist. It's still a normal career. But around when I was like 26, I call it like my quarter life crisis, where I essentially thought, let me just try in secret to see if I can finish a novel. And then that would really prove to myself that I can even do it. And then that's what became White Ivy. So I think it was just the slow, like building up the courage and conviction to even try to finish a book and try to see if I could make it as a writer professionally.
Well, you did. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your book is now on the New York Times bestsellers list, which is amazing.
Thank you.
I think my favorite part about this book is that there's no fluff in this book. Sometimes books just have like a lot of added fluff, scenes that don't really need to be there, that don't really advance the plot at all. But everything in this book comes back in like a really nice full circle, and it just makes reading it so much more pleasurable. It's
Thank
so
you.
nice.
I think I attribute that to my editor. She was very good, about guiding me on the themes and the vision for it. So that's editing.
Awesome. This book talks a lot about class division and being an outsider. Is that how you felt growing up in America?
Yeah, I feel like I almost, when I was growing up, I wouldn't have articulated that way. I wouldn't have said, oh, I feel like an outsider. But it's only when I look back that I realized I just kind of took feeling different for granted. Do you know what I mean? Like it felt almost like that was the status quo for me. And I didn't necessarily at the time attribute it to being an immigrant or being Chinese American. It was more of, personality traits or, being an introvert or being a goody-goody, whatever it was. It was like, oh, I feel different. But I didn't necessarily, think about why until I grew up and thought, oh, it's because I didn't come from the same culture, right? Like the foods that my parents ate wasn't like that. My parents can speak English. So I always did have that outsider perspective of sort of, and I moved around a lot too. So I was always really used to being the new girl. And I think that I attributed my feeling of otherness more to being the new girl. It was always, I went to 8 different schools before college. So it was always like the new girl and trying to, meet new friends. Yeah, so I think the outsider perspective comes more from the moving.
Wow. 8 different schools. That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
This book has a lot of really cool twists and turns, like literally in the last 2 pages, without giving anything away. Did you know how it would end? Did you just have the idea in your mind that this is where I want the story to go?
Yeah, when I was thinking about what kind of book, it was always the different parts. I always had that, the childhood part, then the China part, then the cottage adult scene, and then the last part. So I always kind of knew where Ivy's journey was headed. Yeah.
So it's been said that White Ivy has recently been optioned by Shonda Rhimes for Netflix as a limited series. Are you allowed to tell us more about this?
Yeah, it's public. So it happened in June, and it sort of like fell from the sky. It was June. We were in lockdown, and I got an email from my film agent, and he had said that like he had interest from a few different production companies, and that was beginning of June. And then the entire month was really just talking to the different showrunners and producers and, getting their feedback. And then it's quite slow, which I didn't realize. Like it takes so many conversations to even gauge interest. And then, he got like the bids started coming in, but then we did a few rounds of that. So the whole month I really was just like glued to my phone. Like I was just waiting for the emails to come up, like getting real time. But the most exciting part was I still remember my Will, my film agent, he emails me and he said, so Shonda Land is, they're really interested in your book and Shonda Rhimes is reading it right now. And it was like my evening for me, and I just could not do anything. And I was just like, can you send me like live updates on Shonda reading it? Like what page is she on? What is she like? I want to see her face while she's reading. And then the next day he emailed to say, yeah, she finished the book last night and really loved it. But that evening, it was so surreal. Like I just kept on thinking, oh, Shonda's reading my book. Shonda's reading my book. That was one of the craziest, that was one of the craziest nights.
Do you think you'll have any say in the show?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. It's so new to me, this whole process. And even, so far, it got optioned. And I think they're looking for writers is what was what I last heard, somebody to adapt. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh gosh, I can't wait to see it. If you did have a choice on who played the 3 leading love interests, who would you pick?
My agent and I played this game like so many months ago. I feel like everyone I suggest is like old, and that just like reveals my age. You know what I mean? I'm still like, oh, Matt Damon, but he can't like play like a 25-year-old anymore. I think somebody suggested like Timothy Chalamet for either Rue or Gideon. I think he's like really cool now. For Ivy, I don't know. Like I really love Lana. I mean, I watched that her Netflix movie that was really good. And I really liked her in it, but I don't know. And then I think for I really love Rooney Mara, like for Sylvia, because she's kind of got that like cold kind of vibe, you know what I mean? Like a little bit sinister. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the people I follow are probably like, there's probably cooler, younger stars these days that I don't know about.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Was there anything that surprised you about writing the character for Ivy? Was there anything that she did that you were just like, wow, I can't believe I wrote this?
I feel like so much of writing Ivy was me, if you can believe it, like pulling back. Like, I swear my editor, sometimes she would circle passages and be like, this is getting a little bit like absurd, because I really love books that are like dark. They're like very dark humor or comedy of manners. And so I feel like a lot of the situational, for example, the Thanksgiving scene where the 2 families come together, I feel like a lot of the situations I write tend to almost like borderline satire, and it can feel quite over the top, and they're too horrible to each other. So for me, a lot of it was just dialing it back and keeping it more subtle and not having it be so over the top where Ivy is so bad or people are so ill-intentioned. So it was actually dialing it back for me, is giving Ivy, like making her softer, even though her thoughts may be, quite mean and selfish, like giving her kind of, the space to do nice things, so she may have, so one example is toward her brother and toward her roommate, Andrea, like she may think all these bad things about them, but I think her actions to them are still quite, protective and loyal. So it was really kind of softening her down throughout the different drafts.
Are there books that you've read that inspired you to become a writer?
Oh my gosh, I would say it's probably all the books I read when I was young. They leave the deepest impression. So I was a huge like Anne of Green Gables fan. I was a huge, I loved A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Like I'm a rereader, so I tend to, reread my favorite books over and over again. I loved Steinbeck, like East of Eden is one of my favorite novels. I love Gone with the Wind. So because I didn't study English, I'm quite new to contemporary literature. So I feel like I'm super influenced, by just the things that I would pick up at the library or, things that friends would recommend me. But those were the books that I read over and over again, like Brideshead Revisited. I already mentioned Edith Wharton. So I think these were the ones that sort of became the pillars of what I wanted to achieve eventually. Not that I'm saying I have, but just the work that I wanted to do eventually. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have another project in the works?
Oh, yeah, I'm like around 200 pages into book two. I don't know if they're any good, but it deals with similar themes of like identity politics. It's set between U.S. and Beijing, and it's a love story that also spans around a decade, and it sort of again offers the outsider perspective into the Chinese entertainment industry. So it kind of deals, with the theme of like appearances and the public persona versus the private self. I think these are just themes that I'm currently interested in.
Awesome. Let's take a couple of audience questions. Got some really good ones. All right, audience members, if you have a question, just click on the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen and just write it in there. Do Nan and Shen represent typical Chinese parents?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because I feel like even Ivy doesn't represent a typical Chinese daughter, and Mayphone really, I don't feel like is a typical Chinese grandmother. Like Nan and Shen really are not even like my parents. To be honest, I felt like I had to make them quite mean and quite strict because I wanted the reader to feel sympathy for Ivy. So that was like a very, storytelling decision on my end. It was to, make Nan quite, cold and unloving and taking away her things so that Ivy has the desire to steal and she doesn't want to be like her mom. So that was quite deliberate on my part. But I think Chinese parents, like there's a whole idea of like a tiger mom, but I feel like there's still the fundamental idea of like being loving, but showing love in different ways. But I don't necessarily feel like Ivy felt that from her mom, and which is what made her so, kind of reject her roots so like vehemently. So yeah, I would not say that would be the case.
Would you consider writing a sequel to Ivy?
Maybe one day, if I feel like I have an inspiration for what the nugget for that would be, I feel like I always need some scene that would be really interesting for me, but I haven't thought too much about it.
This one's from Joseph. Does Ivy's fiance have a secret? I don't know how much you can give away.
Yes, I think everybody in this book has secrets, and I think they all have their own agendas. And the pleasure actually of writing the novel was I wanted the reader to understand all the people's agendas, but I wanted Ivy to not necessarily know that. And so it was kind of the balance between how much smarter is the reader going to be to Ivy and then watching her discover the world for herself.
Ivy is such an unique character. I've never read a book with she's so different from normal protagonists because she's not a great person.
No.
But you want her to be so badly. You want to root for her, but she makes all of these questionable choices that you're just like, oh man, but you still love it. You love it. It's so fantastic.
Thank you.
This one is from Kristen. How did Shonda Rhimes contact you? She said it's amazing that your book's going to be a Netflix series.
Fingers crossed. It's been optioned, but I hear that it's very unstable. She contacted me through my film agent. So he was the one who was, emailing back and forth between me and my agent and Shonda Land, which is her production company. So he set that up, and then we did a Zoom call, or I actually think it was a conference call. Yeah, I think it was a conference call at the time. I don't even think it was on Zoom.
Awesome. And we have one more question from Sue. What is your all-time favorite author?
Oh my God. No, that's too hard. That's not fair. That's not fair. No, that's too unfair. I can name a few. I love, there's too many. I think I already listed so many of them. On top of the ones I already named, I love like Ishiguro. He's one of my favorites. I always read Never Let Me Go, and it always makes me cry. I really love Richard Yates. I love Revolutionary Road. That book was so good, and I read all of his work over and over again. There's too many. Yeah, I would say all the people I've already named.
How do you feel about your book being on the New York Times bestselling list?
I feel sort of disconcerted. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like, it feels like it's so, like, I feel so lucky. But mostly I feel like really, like that moment was really special because it felt like a team effort. Do you know what I mean? Like it was so nice to celebrate with the entire Simon & Schuster team. And they had called me on Zoom for like, I didn't know, they were like, get on Zoom now. And everybody was there. So it really felt really special because it's like everybody's hard work paid off, you know, like my agent, the publicist, and my marketing person, editor. So it really felt like a team win, and that was really special for me.
That's awesome. I haven't read such a fast-paced and fun, thrilling book since AJ Finn's Woman in the Window. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've had one that like really, I read it in a day and a half. I think I read it in 16 hours and I was just going for it. And like every hour I was into something and my boyfriend would hear me go, wow, or what? It was so much fun.
Thank you
so much, Susie Yang, for joining us tonight. This has been such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on. I hope you're all safe, wherever everybody is.
Yeah. You can click that green button below your screen. It's going to take you directly to our website where you can pick up this New York Times, the best-selling book, White Ivy. It's so, so good, and it makes a wonderful Christmas gift or holiday gift, or just for yourself. Make sure you get a copy because shipping is all weird now. So make sure you get it. You order it early so you can get it in time.
There's delays now? Oh, wow.
There's some delays, so make sure you're ordering it, or you can stop right into the store and grab a copy. It was so good. Thank you so much, Susie.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great night, everyone.